We're going to engage in an activity that hopefully gets you a better understanding of what goes into a sentence that clearly expresses an author's purpose, your interpretation or analysis of a theme in a piece of work. For this, I want you guys to break off into two groups of two, if you don't mind. So to make sure your thought is independent, two of you get up and travel to a completely new table so that we don't get any cross-pollination of ideas right now. Yeah, if you can. Yeah. Don't hurt the other hand. Just use the cast hand. All right, so when we're thinking about the shawl, based on our discussion yesterday, what are the main ideas that are being expressed in the shawl?
Comfort.
What about comfort?
Warmth.
What's giving him warmth and comfort? It's okay. So reading, something about reading being comforting. Does anybody have a different word than comforting that they think applies to the way reading exists in the shawl? Or do we all just want to roll for comforting or roll with the idea of comforting right now? Reliable? I don't know how to spell reliable, so I'm just going to make it up and write worse there. What? Yeah. Well, when I was in college writing in-class essays for my English classes, I'm a terrible speller. And so when I always thought that was embarrassing to be an English major and not be able to spell well. So when I was writing my in-class essays and I'd get to a word that I wanted to use, but I didn't know how to spell, I would intentionally write sloppier in that moment so the teacher could call me out on it. It worked out really well for a while. However, then my writing devolved to a point where my penmanship could not be read by my professor. So for the in-class essays, she's like, come in after class and read me your essays. So I had to sit across from, this intellectual titan and read my essay out loud to her. And the entire time I'm reading, I'm kind of like glancing up and looking at her eyes. And like when she goes like this, my heart sinks. When she nods, I'm like, oh, cool. So I don't care that much about your opinion right now. So I will just do this and still remain confident as I talk to you in class. All right. So reading is comforting. Reading is reliable. Anything else for reading? Okay. Now, entertaining. Safe. Do you get entertaining in there?
Well, it was I think he described that as monotonous before he goes on to
right. Okay, so if reading is a contrast at the beginning, that can get you to entertain or safe. Now, it can be, so could reading be any of these things? Does it have to be all of them? Does it have to be just one or two? No, I would say any of these would be a fair interpretation of how this author feels towards reading in the poem. Now, here's the trick, though. If you just left it at this, and I asked you, hey, somebody tell me about what's going on in the shawl, and you wrote me a sentence that articulated that the shawl is a poem that's trying to express how reading is comforting or reading is rebellious. That would not be complete enough because it ignores the first 2/3 of the poem. There are other significant ideas in here that would need to be in a sentence that states this poem's main idea or theme. Does that make sense? What are the other ideas, significant ideas, that are expressed in the shawl? So the darkness in the beginning. Now, what's going on with that darkness in the beginning, Will?
He's surrounded by it.
Yep.
Kind of immersed outside and inside the bus.
And that darkness inspires him to do what?
I'm just reading this the first time today.
Okay. Okay.
Seek refuge in his book.
Okay, so the darkness first causes him to go where? To what?
To the light.
To that sweet knee.
Oh yeah.
That sweet lady knee. And then he goes from sweet lady knee to reading, thankfully. He's not a serial killer. So that darkness is inspiring some what?
Bad thoughts.
No, get rid of the word bad.
Creepy.
Well, Imperfect.
It's thoughts.
Curvy.
Thoughts.
Curvy.
It's thoughts like reflection,
Check it out.
I'm just imagining her being like a 70-year-old
Curiosity.
woman.
introspection.
I'm thinking like supermodel leg, you know, like sticking out to the side. Like, see, you know,
That's how my
like
wife
the
and I
scene in Shrek.
met. I was wearing shorts at a football game, and she saw my knee down the line, and she was like, "Oh," took her face like, "I need to see who is the man behind that
I
knee.
need to see the
I need." See, Bramer got it. All right. Last thing that's going on in here, it's not just that reading is comforting and all of this. What is the relationship between reading and the knee?
They're in the same place.
Think about words I just.
The book's more comforting than the need.
Yeah, it's a contrast,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so it's not just that reading is cool, it's that reading is greater than the need.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to write a sentence about what's going on in this poem, that sentence needs to encompass all of this. It's not just that reading is cool, it's that reading is better than the need. It's not just that reading is better than the knee. It's something about thoughts, introspection that is inspired by loneliness or the absence of other people or the absence of distraction. Now this up here is an oversimplified version of the ideas that are in the shawl. You know what I mean? I would not want you to write, reading is safe. Boom, done, crushed it. All right, I would not want you to write that even though knees are cool, reading is safe and inspired by thoughts. Now, this is kind of like a touchstone for the ideas that you would need to put into a sentence. So what I want you and your partner to do right now is take the next, I said 9:50, right?
Yeah.
Okay, take the next 6 minutes, and in these next 6 minutes, I want you to come up with a sentence that contains these ideas and expresses what is the main point, what is the theme in the shawl, what is the purpose of the shawl. Then after those 6 minutes are up, you're going to read them out loud. And I'm going to tell everyone what I like and don't like about your sentences. And this is an activity designed for me to tell you what I don't like. It's an activity designed to get you to understand what a quality one of these sentences sound like. Because you need to have the language skills to be able to express these complex thoughts. And if you don't have those language skills, then I need to teach you those language skills so that you can craft a sentence that does all of this. Does that make sense? I mean, we got compare contrast in here. We got some cause effect in here. Which makes sense based on the activity we did in the beginning of class, right? That's called teaching. All right, get to it. 6 minutes.
All right. And start with
So I want to just
Thank you.
thinking of words. Go with the darkness versus
We never started like it's how we feel. Like
darkness and
We're just say, like,
isolation of the darkness.
The main idea of the shawl is expressed through,
Go to that.
yeah.
Comfort.
yeah, like
there's that and
And since then, he used cold shoulder. Because
that work.
The theme of the shawl is shown through the,
yeah.
just say it's like picture showing that, like, you have to mention the characters, what he's doing.
Oh, yes.
So,
I would keep starting with the next sound in that. So let's just write down some ideas and then we'll
say,
collab.
like, during the bus ride in the shawl or something like that, you know?
Review reflection. Overwhelm or the feeling of comfort is brought through reading
To contrast
the dark of
yeah.
everyday life or something.
Mhm.
But we
we need to put like in the shawl or
You should put
something.
a light in there. Yeah. Do we need to put the shawl in there? Mention the shawl.
I would say it would be helpful. If there's a way to do it without, there's a way to do it with. Most people do it by visual.
Through the characters, deep reflection in the shawl. Or-
The characters. Comfort from reading sweeps away the darkness. Through the characters, deep reflection in the show.
You agree?
Yeah.
Almost done.
Halfway.
50%. How close are we over here?
On track. Despite that.
There we go, that sounds good. Should say like the steady comfort, or like the stable. It's like that's what he's trying to emphasize is that
Character. Character fine.
Love it.
these flashes of comfort. Read out that.
Mr. Winberg, which variability goes on?
We didn't start the fire.
I just had to know.
Well, what about Piano Man?
What about the other man? It's everyone's favorite.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, what version of Lead It to Fire? The Billy Joel version or the Office version?
Billy Joel.
The Office is still like, close up there.
It's
Yeah.
It's a tight one too.
Yeah.
Good, Lindy.
Young and Hale is done.
Yeah, like 1 minute.
1 minute away. Feeling good about this one.
Yes.
It's really exciting. All right, well, we're gonna save that one for last then.
Oh.
Okay, so you're just gonna read it out loud. I'm gonna tell you what I like and don't like about it. Don't try to change your own, as we go through this. So let's say that Bramer gives his and it's got some sort of fatal flaw to it, and yours has that same fatal flaw. You can see it right away. That's fine. Read it with that fatal flaw. That's a learning opportunity for the class to be able to identify that in yours. So read what you have. All right, Bramer.
So, the shawl's main ideas are that reading can be a refuge for the monotony or darkness of life, a reward for inquiry, and a safe haven for thought and inspiration.
So you've done a good job of giving us this over here. You've done a good job of kind of like touching on this right here. You have not given us how reading is better than this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's an important thing that has to be in there. So you crushed it, other than you missed out on getting that reading isn't just these things. It's this and it's better than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Class, does that make sense? All right. Back there.
All right. In the darkness, a woman's knee may be enlightening, but you'll find that a book is far more reliable and comforting.
Do that one more time.
All right. In the darkness, a woman's knee may be enlightening, but you'll find that a book is far more reliable and comforting.
The book is far more reliable because of the steady light, right? Comforting, shawl. Read the first part again. The last part's great.
In the darkness, a woman's knee may be enlightening.
Okay. I don't know if I would have, it's not like the woman's knee. A woman's knee is a representation of what? Desires of the flesh, something like lust, something like that. So I would have changed woman's knee to something that woman's knee represents.
I had to put the word knee in there though. It makes it,
Why did you say in the darkness? Beyond the fact that he's in the dark in the beginning.
Because it's just the same things going by. It's just all this weed. It's just boring.
Okay, now that's that idea of boredom or monotony is different than in the darkness. Because when I say the phrase "in the darkness" carries with it almost sinister connotations.
Yeah.
Like I'm surrounded by death and despair and depression, stuff like that. That's not necessarily what's going on here in the beginning, right? It's more that he is literally in the darkness, but it's more that boredom and depression. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say your sentence is beautiful with the exception of "in the darkness." Doesn't do a great job of accurately reflecting what's happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what would be a better way to
Class, what would be a better way?
And an adjective, describe the darkness, what it means in this.
Maybe when left alone to one's own thoughts.
all right.
When lost in your own head.
Solitude.
Yeah. Surrounded by solitude. Sweet knees look good. But again, don't do that because we don't want to say sweet knees. All right. So close, but no. Right here.
Alright, so we're both kind of somewhere.
Yeah.
Despite the immersive darkness in the show, the main character discovers the power of reading to contrast the shadows of personal desires through his own introspection.
Could you read that one more time, a little slower?
Despite the immersive darkness in the show, the main character discovers the power of reading to contrast the shadows of personal desires through his own introspection.
So good job about the introspection. Good job about drawing a contrast between reading and the knee. Class, read it one more time. Listen to it one more time. He's missing something. See if you can't pinpoint what's missing.
Despite that immersive darkness in the show, the main character discovers the power of reading to contrast the shadows of personal desires through his own introspection.
Comfort.
Right. It's not just the power of reading. What is the power of reading? The power of reading to be able to,
I should have just said discover the comfort of reading.
and that would have done it.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of because what is the power of reading?
Yeah.
So beautiful except for that. Okay, here we go.
Now it doesn't sound as good, but we'll still go for it. We'll still go for it. I'm a little more literal.
Okay.
All right. The Shawl by Albert Goldberg. A man isolated in the Shawl by Albert Goldberg. A man isolated in the darkness of a nearby bus, or a near empty bus, retreats to the intriguing woman's knee ahead of him, and instead seeks refuge in his more reliable comfort, a book.
So that is actually representative very much of like what was happening last hour. So what would you say if you had? What would you say is the issue with that one?
It's not.
Right,
more.
It's more of a summary, right? It's a well composed summary, and it has all of these elements, but it's being framed as like this is what's happening to this character. And when you summarize something, so when I ask you to say, "Hey, what's the theme here?" and you present it as a summary, and Albert, this is what happens to this character. Or if you were to say something like Albert Goldbarth believes that. When you do that, you're sort of like offloading the intellectual risk from your shoulders and putting it back on the author. You're saying that these aren't my ideas, so I can't necessarily be judged as right or wrong with this. These are the author's ideas, and I kind of wash my hands of them, and I'm just reporting to you what he is doing. If you remember what we talked about yesterday or 2 days ago, is literature being that negotiation between denotation and connotation. If you take yourself out of it, you're taking connotation out of it. And again, you're offloading that intellectual burden. You have an intellectual burden when you engage with the text. Good to go? All right, so homework for Monday. The same sentence that you just wrote, you're going to write for the poem immediately below the shawl. I'll read it out loud to you, Introduction to Poetry. You got to come back not tomorrow, you have to come back on Monday with a theme statement about Introduction to Poetry. Things you want to pay attention to. It's not just that reading is comforting, it's reading's relationship to this other stuff in the shawl. Same thing exists in Introduction to Poetry. Same thing exists in all literature. Your theme, your truth is never simply stated. If you remember from your reading for today or yesterday, reading doesn't give simple answers to simple questions. It asks complex questions and approaches complex answers. Your sentences need to reflect that. That's why you want to focus on using intro phrases, coordinating conjunctions in them. Complicated lists. There you go. Introduction to Poetry. This is a good one. This is one of my, when I'm just, on a nice summer day, I like to read this because it's fun. All right. By Billy Collins. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. So come back on Monday with a sentence that encompasses the theme statement to that bad boy. And if you can get it done in 3 minutes, no homesies.
I feel like this is kind of ironic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's why it's
for
fun.
with this situation at hand.
100%. All right, are we good to go? Have a great rest of your day. And stream.
That's what it seems like.
There's still that.